Suhas Motwani is currently full time with PepsiCo, building out a bunch of internal tools on their finance and innovation team. On the side, he manages one of India's largest volunteer driven product communities, the Product Folks. And he's also building a suite of productivity apps at Indistract to help folks fight digital distraction. So we caught up with Suhas to pick his brains about community building. How should one think about it at different stages 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100? How should volunteers think about communities and what they can get out of communities like the product folks? We also spoke about the changing world of work, Indian startups, and product management. If you want insights, deep insights on community building from someone who's been there and done that, you will want to listen to this. If you're serious about your future relevance and building a career in products, you'll definitely want to listen to this. Hi, welcome Suhas. Welcome to the CTQ Smartcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Harish. Super excited to chat with you today.
Yeah. So let me start with an easy one, and we'll throw in a bouncer immediately after that. But the easy one is, what is a community for you? What is its importance, and why should one start a community? What inspired you to start the product folks? Just talk about that.
Sure. So early days of product folks was essentially we were doing offline events, right? And if you think of the early days, our intention was just to get interesting people in the same room. Funny story, I think we were also early in our career. We were like, okay, hey, we also want to, meet other people in our, similar space, similar time, people who are looking to, grow in their product careers. And also we were talking one-to-one with senior product leaders. So we were like, okay, others might also be interested, whether just as a fly on the wall or, maybe we were looking at, hey, how do we just get interesting people in the room? That's it. Nowhere where we are today. That was the baseline where we started. So we started doing offline events. First offline event was in Bangalore. Luckily got some support. Gave us space. Two product leaders came down, shared their time with us for about 1 2 hours, and we got about 70, 80 folks in the room, right? Imagine zero social presence back then, either personal or DPA. We had to manually DM a lot of people to come, and people turned up. So we were like, okay, hey, this is interesting, right? We're getting people in the room. People are also interested. So let's just do it, right? So that's how the early days of TPS just started getting interesting people. We got to meet interesting people, and at the same time, they got to network. So then we started WhatsApp groups. They used to interact. They used to stay back, network, then get into WhatsApp group. And that was the early days of TPF. Slowly, we started growing across different cities, just offline events, but across 9 different cities in India. Took some time, one city at a time. But over 6 months, 8 months, I think every month we used to do these offline events. Then COVID hit, right? So we had to switch everything online post that, and I think that's when we started learning. Okay, hey, what is it that the community wants? We didn't know we were building community back then. Honestly, we just started with these events and offline groups. Didn't know anything what community management was, etc., etc. So with that intention, slowly we started getting reach out saying that, okay, hey, we're also interested to break into product. And back then we saw what were the offerings available in the market. There were boot camps, there were MBA colleges. That's how people were breaking into product. Well, okay, hey, there's lots of great content on the internet already. Why don't we just curate it and share it with them, right? So that's where learnpm.me was born. And within a month, we were seeing easily about 6,000, 8,000 hits on the website organically, right? Back then also social was not that strong for us. So we were like, okay, hey, people are interested to read. And once we started getting some feedback, we were seeing, okay, there is a good time spent on the website. But even like 2 3 months later, we were still getting DMs saying that, hey, content is great. You've curated it well, gives us an understanding, but we're still not able to break into product, right? So the outcome is still not coming. Some of them are maybe trying on their own and getting, but a large majority won't. And as we started growing and doing these events, we realized there were a lot more people who wanted to break into product. There is enough demand. There's lots more supply. At the same time, someone needs to play that enabler route and connect these two in a better way. So that's when In Search of, which is today our flagship program, in a very, very small format, we started that, saying that, and everything, if you notice, is built based on something that we're hearing from all of our members, right? So Learn PM with me came from there. And from there, we were like, okay, hey, outcomes, how do we target? So we looked at a lot of the APM programs in the US. And there was this company in Canada called Toronto APM, which was doing a similar program. And we were like, okay, hey, this might be interesting. Can we do something similar, but for India? And we started off with a very tiny cohort, did two small cohorts of that. And then this time was our biggest flagship, right? The same thing. We just unbundled the entire offering. We saw about 2,000, 3,000 people were on the wait list for this year's program. we were like, okay, let's do one thing. Let's open up the educational bit, right? Get the most like senior folks, the best folks in the industry to take up each of these topics, about 12 topics we had. And education is open to all. Those who go through the entire, whoever's putting in the effort, doing the assignments, doing the office hours, doing the weekly live sessions, coming down to the taverns networking, all that is free. And completely open to everyone. Right? Of course, there was some amount of shortlisting based on how they filled. They had to take about 15-20 minutes to fill out a form. So based on that, some basic level shortlisting. That's all. Nothing. No one was eliminated as such if you filled everything, and everyone gets access, right? So we're not stopping anyone from that access, but at the end of it, what we do, we have an assessment, right? A 50-minute assessment, and based on that, they attach the PRD. They've been working on a PRD for 12 weeks. They attach that. And based on that, the top quartile gets access to opportunities, gets access to mentorship. What we used to do for maybe 10 to, well, that was the operationally heavy bit, right? And because what we were doing there was like we had so many people on waitlist, we were like, why don't we open up this? Like more people get access, right? And that had tremendous response. We got about 20,000 signups on that, and slowly, like I think lots of things in between. But to cut short, I think that's how like the journey has started. Like if you ask me, okay, hey, what was TPF early on? Why did we start it? Initially, it was just that, but gaining interest, gaining some need in the market, gaining some more responses from the members in the community that hey, this is something that's missing. Can you guys come together? That is how I think that the community has grown, and of course. An unsaid truth is like a really good set of volunteers who came on board, right, to build together the core team, the main group, all the volunteers who are currently also new folks who've joined in. All of them put a lot of effort behind the scenes, which goes unnoticed. So I think huge props to that. Touchwood, luckily, we've been able to get a very, very good set of folks to actually run this.
Right,
That's a
right,
very
yeah,
good story.
yeah. So product has always been, an area of weakness for the, for the Indian, whatever,
Right.
country, system, whatever you want to call it, right? Services was
Yeah.
always our forte.
Right.
And, this has been something which, NASCOM has tried to address. There have been other,
Yeah.
bodies. I think there's an Institute of Product Leadership, and
Yeah.
people have tried to do it on their own. Of course, now I see some of these, individual PMs running their own courses,
Yeah.
where they are doing this.
Yeah.
But do you see this, the current rise of the Indian startup space much better than what it was last 10 years ago, where so many companies are now they have achieved
Yeah.
product market fit. They're now getting into the IPO stage. Unicorns are reigning left, right, and center. All that
Yeah.
is also a culmination of this whole product movement now becoming mature, and that's how we can actually say that whatever we used to think of the Silicon Valley, right? That things are like that, in Silicon Valley, and here it's always services. So have we sort of reached that inflection point with respect to product startups in India?
100%. I think lots of folks today you see, I think Anu Hariharan also recently said the quality of entrepreneurs, the quality of products that are getting built is far, far ahead. I'm not sure I can comment from 10 years ago. I probably wasn't in the market back then, but what I can say for sure is in the last 5 years also from what I've been observing, um, two parts to this, right? One is definitely a lot more for coming and helping, that give back is there in the society, which probably would have been there, but at least it's far greater today, right? These are folks who maybe come back from the valley. These are folks who've worked with, Flipkarts and Snapdeals, who've grown to the edges. So they've seen some amount of scale, right? They've been building products, they've been involved in the space and are now ready to give back. So I think that is also a huge factor. That is one side of things. And on the other side of things, I think the mindset is also slowly shifting, right? Over the years, I think startups have become less risky, right? Compared to a lot of talented folks, how they used to think earlier. Maybe I go down to the US. Maybe that's where the money gets. I don't want to work in such. So maybe that was the thought process back then. But now I see even folks right in college doing lots of internships. They graduate from good colleges, want to join early stage startup. The knowledge of ESOPs is improving. Founders are now realizing how important it is to build the team, give them also some skin in the game. These are small things, but I think all of this adds up, right? I don't think product alone. In fact, like you mentioned, I think NASCOM, etc., have done a fantastic job building that ecosystem, building the foundation. Now it's just things have changed a little bit, right? NASCOM probably was building the bridge between how do you transition from services to products. Now it is about how do you like develop this entire ecosystem. If you see over the last 3 years, it's been more about how do you bridge talent and startups, right? So there was one shift, if you call it, between services and product, which I think we've crossed to a certain extent, right? Of course, it's not going anywhere, right? Infosys and TCS are still probably one of the largest, and that is here to stay. But I feel at least we've crossed that inflection point where lots of folks are they're thinking about, right? Even if they've been in the industry for some time, or they've been, right out of college, everyone is trying to think that entrepreneurial work is hitting a lot of people, right? In some form or the other, whether it is side projects, whether it is full time, whether it's working with startup. If you think of it, even like a founding team is taking some risk, maybe not as much as the founder, but at least taking that risk, at least like having that mindset that, okay, I want to work, I want to build something. I think that inflection point is definitely here. And only going to grow. I feel like this decade is India's decade, right? Probably what we did over the last decade was a foundation, but this entire 2020 to 2030 is definitely India's decade. We're no more seen as an outsourcing hub, right? Some of the
Right.
biggest startups are selling, like building here, selling outside of India. The Flipkarts and movies have put us on the global roadmap, right? And like you mentioned, I think unicorns is probably just a secondary effect of that. That's just a validation that, hey, there is outside of money also coming into it. The validation, IPOs are happening, right? This didn't happen till just 3 months ago with the Zomato IPO. Things have restarted. Yes, there were some earlier, but this has started the new wave, right? Today, I think was the last day of Paytm. So I think with Zomato, Nika had a fabulous start, right? So I think there's a series of events which will bring back more liquidity in the ecosystem, which will again spur up. So this entire loop is just getting a lot more stronger.
I think it's also a question of the Indian consumer now becoming, more aware. So they're also probably demanding better products, right? I think it is working both sides, both ways.
100% agree. I think, I mean, if you see, it's absolutely true what you mentioned, right? If you think design has such a big focus today compared to, X number of years ago, we were probably like, hey, let's just ship this. People will use it. But now I think that aesthetics also has a like the entire UI plays so much of an important role. Founders are, looking for designers very early on. Good product designers are so hard to find. So I think all of that is coming together, and I think it's just not, ठीक है चलता है, this product works is not the attitude that is in founders also trying to build much better products that work, of course, but also much, better working. How do you make it simpler for the user? What is the best way for, from A to B, for that to happen? How do you make it more visually aesthetic? I think all of that is coming together. That's why I mentioned, like, I think this is probably just like the inflection point that we were waiting for. Maybe these IPOs are just going to add more fuel to that fire for sure.
Right. In fact, when I look at what people consider as, a PM's work these days, the role, if I look back at, when I started my first startup in 2010, that is what a founder would have been thinking of, right? Today, almost all of that responsibility is with the PM these days, because it's not just, product manager is not just looking at the technical aspect, but, a whole range of things which earlier would have been, what a founder would have been thinking about. So it's an interesting progress. But coming back to, to you and the product folks, Suhas. So, now that you've been running this, this is the bouncer that I talked about earlier, right? So what do you know about community building that others don't?
I can tell you one. I don't know whether others know it or not, but I think one thing I've realized over time is consistency plays a lot of effort, right? There is so many things that you need to. And second thing is also, you just need to put in the hours, right? There's no shortcut to it, right? You need to put into hours to understand those first, 200, 300 members. What do they exactly want? There is no way you can scale this from day zero, right? For example, I'll give you a parallel example, right? Tomorrow, if it was just about starting a business, starting up, I could just probably, figure out a place where I can source material X, set up a Shopify store, run ads, and at least try making a margin. I'm not saying it will work, but at least I can put
Right.
that, and there is a chance of making it autopilot, right? For a community to get to that stage, there's a lot of effort. People think, okay, Discord, I'll start a Discord server. I have some following today on LinkedIn or on Twitter or anywhere. I'll just run an, or even if I don't, I'll run an ad. I'll bring them to that Discord server, and we'll engage. And that's it. Like, community management is so easy, right? I feel that's been the biggest learning. I feel it's very easy to start a community in today's day and age, right? Because everything is digital. For the last year and a half, everyone's been stuck at home, so it's very simple to start a community. But the hardest part is retaining, right? As simple as that. That how are you going to ensure folks find interest, right? Find interest whether you're doing an event, whether you're doing something online. In an online world, I think retention is the hardest challenge. And I feel in one way, although we started offline, I think that was a huge boon like to us, right? Logistically super hard. I might not go back to doing it, but because we did that, honestly, I think we have a much tighter early community because they met in person, right? They know each
Right.
other from person. What they're engaging online is a like a follow on to that. It's a loop closing over there. So I think from that aspect, boon or bane, I think that was definitely a plus one to it. Online has just helped us scale a lot faster, right? So I feel like give it time, right? If I were to like tell someone who's starting, and this is something we share with everyone at the community fund, give it time, right? Unlike a lot of other things, this one will require a lot more patience. Understand things can change very fast here also, right? You might start a community within 3 months, people might not be as engaged. You'll figure out something else, and it'll evolve, it'll evolve, it'll evolve. You can draw lots of parallels between community management and product management. Just community management, I feel, requires a lot more patience. In product management, you need a little more impatience, right? You need things to move a little faster. In community management, that is the only difference. Or else you can draw infinite number of parallels between product management, you as a founder building a startup, and you as a community manager running your own community. I think these are three parallels you can draw. I would say lots of things are very, very similar. But one thing I definitely put a lot more emphasis on is on consistency. We've done about 350 events, right, in just 2.5 years. That means almost, if you counted it, every week we might be doing at least three. Like if you put an average number to it, right, over the last more than 2 years now. So and this is something that has been happening over time, right? Initially, okay, we were across lots of cities, but now online also we've been able to maintain that. So I think that is a factor: consistency and patience. I feel these are two things. If someone had told me early on, I think I'd have been a lot more confident, a lot more, double down on it much more earlier. I think we took it very slow initially because we didn't have an idea ourselves, right? Where were we going? This is something I wish lots more people know. And if you do it for 2 years, there's lots of potential on top of it, right? I'm just sharing where we are at today. I'm not sharing any nuggets of wisdom. I'm just telling you what we've learned over the last 2.5 years. And I can tell you for a fact there's lots of things you can do after you cross that 9 month, 12-month period. Just that consistently do it, right? It's as simple as even like when you guys do a podcast, right? You can draw lots of parallels, right? When you do a podcast, that first 6 months is the hardest, right? Because you don't see any output. But as soon as you cross that episode number X, right? And if you're just doing one episode every week for 1 year, right? You have 50 episodes out. That's when things start kicking in. So you need to go through that grind for 1 year. Same thing for community. You can probably draw parallels a lot more easier than maybe other people can.
Right. In fact, I'm actually reminded of this interesting recipe that I had read. I think it was about some French dish, but I think it works for everything. So they had a list of ingredients, and they said the most important ingredient is time.
Ah, nice. Yes. Must have been like a slow cooking recipe, but yes, I agree. I think definitely I would put that as my number one, right? You need to put time into this. If not, there are better ways. Like you might not you don't have to start a community, right? There are lots of things. Once you start a community, there are lots of things you need to take care of, but there are other things you could do as well, right? So you don't have to start a community, but remember that starting a community is the easiest, retaining is the hard. So spend a lot of time. Even when you start a community, spend a lot of time there. And thinking, okay, maybe 12 months is very difficult to plan for, but at least over the next 3 months, where do I want to take it? Like some goals, some activities, and some very rough structure, so that at least you're going one step ahead with it. That's all.
Right. Yeah. So let's unpack this a bit, Suhas. I mean, like you said, starting a community is very easy. In terms of the tools, it's very democratized. Same thing with podcasting, right? Now you can actually publish a podcast very easily. But it's a rest of it, which is actually timeless, right? Which was there earlier as well, which is probably going to hold true later, as well. Which is the mindset that you require. You mentioned patience and showing up. This has got nothing to do with the tools that are available today, right? So what are the tips that you would give to people at different stages of community building? One, let's take 2 or 3 different use cases, right? One is somebody who wants to start a community. One who's probably hit that 6 months, 1 year. Now what next for them? And another one who's probably has a thriving community, knows a lot, but then what next for them as well? Let's look at these 3 use cases and think of what you would recommend.
Sure thing, sure thing. So I'll start with the 0 to 1, like people who are just thinking of starting a community. For them, I'd suggest that take away the inertia, right?
Hmm.
Like I mentioned, start planning for maybe just 3 months. Don't plan 2 years, 5 years from now. Where will I be? What will I do with the community? How do I monetize? All that will follow, right?
Right.
Just have like that initial thing. Hey, where do my interests lie, right? That circle of competence. You might have heard of that theory, right?
Correct.
Where does my interest lie? Because if you're passionate about something, you'll give it a longer term. Especially if it's something like community, you need to delay that gratification as much as possible. So figure out your circle of competence. Based on that, you'll have some more interest to do what you're doing. Right. So that's the only thing. So figure that. Then there are some very easy, like you mentioned. I think tools are just enabling in today's digital era. Say you want to go the same route we did. What you can do very simply is take Luma and WhatsApp, two tools, and in between you already have Zoom. Right.
Hmm.
Three tools very seamlessly. With Luma, gather registrations, attach the Zoom link. At the end of the event, feedback form goes in which you have the WhatsApp link. Entire loop is created, right? If and this is a very neat hack. I'm just giving it away to you, but I think this is the simplest hack. Shouldn't stop anyone from starting, right? You can kick off things so seamlessly, right? So just kick things off. You will figure out. Honestly, I think that is step one. Step two is now, okay, now say X now. And I'm telling you, like if you're starting with events as a community, tomorrow you can start with content as a community. I think from the product perspective, Lenny has done a fantastic job there, right? Started writing a newsletter, built a community on top of it. So tons of different ways to start a community. You need to figure out which channel you want to start with, wherever you're comfortable. Podcast could be another. Acquire does a great community behind a podcast, right? So there are different channels where you can start. Figure out what works for you. But first step in your 0 to 1, figure out that interest. Figure out like a 2-3 month plan. Hey, where do I want to go? And get started. And then very like on the very next step, try figuring some of the initial members who might be interested, to help you. So I feel like don't go solo into this, because that's where the journey becomes a lot harder to retain, to give that initial. So try finding those early folks. As you're starting, I feel these are the minimal things. One or two things which I can share, which might help you a little more, is also don't go too early into monetizing, right? um, I feel like that just changes the entire dynamic. What in fact your KPI or your North Star at that point of view is, just figure out how do I build relationships, how do I add value, right? Two things, simple. Rest of it will follow. If you are able to build those early relationships, whether with your community members, whether with senior folks who you want to invite, and second, that'll play a much larger role. That is number one. And second is, how do you attract more of these folks to help build with you, right? Don't go into it alone, because it gets hard. You can do it alone, but I just feel like, hey, that journey becomes a lot more harder, right? So for early folks, that is something from that 0 to 1 point of view. As you scale now, say you've been doing it for 6 to 12 months, like you mentioned, right? You have some more members. At this point, there are 2-3 challenges that might come forward, and which might also follow through with the next part that you mentioned. Say you've been doing for 24 months, you've grown a tribe. So there are some common challenges here. Number one, what I see is stagnation, right? People love new things, right? So 24 months into this, someone else starts something new, people are going to try it. So be completely okay with that. Your members are going to go, like the simple bottom truth is, your members are going to go where they find value, right? That is important, the word they find value. If you are the most valuable, they're not going to go there, but be completely okay, right? So 2-3 things what you can start thinking is, how do I stay relevant to today? You might be great 2 years ago, but if you're not staying updated, so people want new things, give them the basics, right? What's working, double down on that. It's not that just because you see some that shiny object theory, right? Just
Right.
don't go behind that. But at the same time, try keeping like innovative. Try keeping yourself innovative, because that's when, as you go on adding new things to your, adding value to your community member, they are going to stick around. If they find the most value here, they're not going to go elsewhere. All right. So try figuring out 12 to 24 months. Okay, maybe for 6 to 12 months is also this relevant. How do you figure out, like, first, number one, double down on things that are working, and second, figure out new things, right? Keep updated the market. What is it that the members want, right? 12 months into our journey, we realize, okay, even though we have this nice little curated, we thought we were doing a great job, but people are not able to transition. They are going to go to something more structured, right? To figure out, keep talking to your members, right? And product, you need to keep talking to your user. In community, you need to keep talking to your member. And if you're building for them, they are going to use it. End of the day, you're listening to them, you're building for them. So it's a much easier way to build products, in fact. right? 6 to 12 months, let's stay there, and that's why you can also start thinking now about that vision, the mission, etc. Right now, you need to get people, and this is I'm telling for early stage, first time community builders. If you are third, fourth time, then maybe you can do a lot of these things much earlier, right? Today, if I would start a community, I would do a lot of things earlier. But first time there, first build momentum, right? The key word here is momentum. Figure out momentum. Once you get some momentum, now start figuring out process. Now start figuring out, vision, mission. All that is important, because that's where community members, your volunteers, your core team members will start aligning to, hey, what is it that we are really doing here? Why am I putting extra time here, right? If it's a volunteer or if it's a full time also, what is it that they want? Because initially even you don't have an idea, so it's not that easy. But now you need to start figuring out, or your core team, you need to sit down with them and figure out, so that everyone else has some direction as to where you're going and what is it that you want to achieve. And here I think lots of principles that you can learn from how Web3 is evolving, right? Community governance, community voting. You can do that in Web2, but a lot of us miss out on that, right? We do it very ad hoc. So like try figuring out how you can involve the community maximum. That is for your 6 to 12 months. Post that, I think now it is about figuring out. Now you have some amount of vision. Now you're going to try aligning more processes. How do you scale? You're at that scaling factor, right? So you hit 1,000 members, say you hit 2,000 members. You need to figure out now, do you want to scale on volume? Do you want to scale on value? Maybe you can bring out paid memberships here, right? It becomes like a freemium layer. Maybe you can start with paid from day one, but then you need to have an audience to sell that. So figure out where I'm telling you broad principles across 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100. But these can definitely overlap based on what your existing journey is, right? Say you have a crazy following on Instagram of 1 million. You can directly start with paid membership from day one, not a problem. You can skip that 0 to 1 entirely, right? But at this, 12 to 24 months plus, we are also at that stage right now. So I feel at that point of time, it's lots more important to ensure that the things that you're doing continue happening. You have processes in place so that even if some of these community members drop or some volunteers drop or someone else can easily step in and pick that up, right? So that is the foundation getting built. And second is now you're in a driving seat, right? You've been doing this for 24 months now. You know the ecosystem better, you know the space a lot better. There might be early people coming, but you've been there, done that for 24 months, right? Using those insights, can you now be in a driving position, right? So now you are big enough, maybe not as big, but you are at least big enough to make small dents, right? Maybe can you figure out how do you start enabling, how do you start bridging it even further, right? Initially things might have been out of, like, if you reach out to the top of the pyramid, that entire block is missing, so it becomes hard. Now you built out a certain block. Can you take those leaps? Can you connect more dots, right? So I think you are now becoming at the center of driving a lot of things. So it is important for you to act more responsibly, but be also a lot more ambitious, right? Now is the time where you set really ambitious goals. It's okay, right? Those are those moonshots. Just like how startups have that 20% for moonshot, you really need to start taking those bridges while maintaining that 80% and growing the community, right? Don't let that go. It might have not become as exciting, because anything new is exciting, but two years into it, now things might seem like, hey, there's some monotony setting up. There is some boring stuff that I need to keep doing month on month. Figure out, hey, can I automate this? All that stuff is where you need to figure out here. There might be something that you cannot automate. Relationships, 30-minute calls, that cannot be automated, right? So if you do have that interest, I think double down on that. Figure out how you can delegate more. How do you onboard more people? You need to do the boring stuff, that is a given, but at the same time, keep 20% of your time for those moonshots, because that is where even your community gets much more excited. Plus you're in a driving seat, right? These moonshots would have been not possible 2 years ago, right? Not possible 24 months ago, but now you're in a good position. So don't miss out on that 20%, but at the same time, ensure that 80% is now maybe driving sustainability for you, maybe driving monetization for you. That can further help grow your community a lot larger. So I think there are different stages. At different stages, focus on different things, and keep it tactical. Like I tried sharing some things that are a little more tactical, and hope that helped. Yeah.
Right. So, while you are, talking about how somebody who is starting a community should be thinking, a parallel, thought struck me, right? Two parts to this question. Have people started, volunteering their time in a different way as compared to earlier, when I guess the default was to go and consume, right?
Yeah.
Now, has it changed? Has that changed? Have people started volunteering their time more easily, more readily?
I think now they're seeing the impact of it, right? Initially, when we started, we didn't really have too much to give back to the volunteers, right? So I think at that point of time it was he like, okay, I just want to like help out and see where it goes. It used to become a lot more difficult to align incentives, right? Because it's a lot farther out. It's not very immediate, right? It's at least like 12 months out where we can even like promise something. Of course, some things you can do, but you need a lot more believers at that stage. Now I think it's a lot more structured, right? We've seen so many of our volunteers transition to product roles themselves, right? They know the importance. So that loop gets created there. Then there is lots more visibility in the ecosystem today. So it's not as hard as it was earlier. People want to associate with, for example, back then, building TPF versus maybe going and contributing to a Google developer circle, a Facebook community. People choose the latter, right? Like TPF,
Right.
no one knew back then, but now you get so much more inbound. Hey, I have say 5 hours a week, I have 10 hours a week. I'd love to help grow the ecosystem. Or for example, we just finished our Insurger, which is our flagship cohort. Lots of them who graduated from that found jobs, and now just immediately they want to say like, hey, you guys did a fantastic job. I'd love to contribute back, right? So if they start seeing the value, that's when people are like, okay, hey, these guys are doing a great job on the side. Why can't I just help them out? All right. So I think it's a factor of time. Initially, it's a lot harder. Initially, you need to do a lot more outbound, get them in. But I think once you have some believers, I think as you scale, right, at the 12 to 24 month mark, there things start becoming a little easier as long as you stay relevant and fun. I think one of the best parts, I think, our volunteers, lots of people ask us, okay, hey, what's in it for the volunteers? Why do people volunteer the time for this? I think we have a younger volunteer set compared to many other organizations. It's a much younger volunteer set. And if you realize outside of college, there are few avenues for you to make friends, right? So I think lots of us, and I can tell you for a fact, some of my closest friends today are volunteers I had met off Twitter. I had never met them in person until this month, right? 2 years into the journey, I had never met them in person. And they're some of my closest friends today. Eventually, you tend to talk to them in a week, you're talking to them 5, 6 hours. So oftentimes things spill outside of that. So I think whoever joins in newly, I tell them, hey, everything apart. Maybe 3 months later, you figure out this is not for you. Life takes over, things get busy. It's completely okay. But bottom line, have fun and make friends, right? If you go out without making friends here, I'll be disappointed, right? Rest of it is up to you, right? You put in more time, you'll get more value. That's the simple fundamental here, right? It is a factor of time, right? Nothing you can do. And everyone grows, right? People who've been contributing early, they see value, they've transitioned, they come back, add more value. So it's a function of time, like you mentioned, right? Exactly the slow cooking recipe you mentioned. This is externally, internally, both is a factor of time.
Right. Yeah. So, one thing that strikes me is that, we often actually talk about this in our work where we say that, today you're seeing this is the age of the empowered employee, right? Even for companies or for startups, you want people who really believe in the cause, right? And how is that going to happen is, when you have, figured out what your North Star is, you have articulated it, everyone is aligned on that, whatever the culture manifesto that you are talking about, there is continuous reinforcement of the culture and all of that, right? The reason why this has become so much important these days is people want to connect with things which they believe in, right? So if I see an employee of a startup devoting 4 hours to a TPF where he or she is not getting paid, but doing it with so much more interest than his or her day job, right? The entrepreneur is going to question that what am I not offering to this employee that he or she is putting in that same time to a TPF, which is why these days companies are also thinking about how can we sort of pick the kernel of what this community building is happening outside and bring it into our own our own world, right? So this is what is happening. Whether it is the right way to go about it or not is a different question, but people are trying to do that. What is your take on that?
To be honest, I don't see a right or wrong here. To be very honest on it, I feel like we'll probably figure out. I feel like at this point of time, it is what works for them, right? If it works for you, great, right? If it doesn't, it is still completely okay, because I still feel like there are so many avenues to grow. Why are people contributing to this? Because they want to, right?
Correct.
Personally, no one is at a stage where it's philanthropy or where
Right.
they are wanting, they have that good intention for sure, right? That's why they're coming forward outside of their full time, they're putting an effort here, right? So that is there for sure. But over time, if they do not see an incentive align, they're putting time outside of this which they could have put into something else, right? and their friends are doing it, everyone else is. So if they don't see that value coming back to them, then it becomes harder in the long term. So somewhere that incentive needs to lie. Sometimes this works for them, sometimes something else might. Many times they would have joined here, might have dropped out, come back later. That's happened also here also. TPF also that happened. So I feel it's completely okay. Either or is okay. Do what works for you. I think it is important for the individual to decide here that, hey, how does this time, and think a little more long term. It's not easy. It's very easy to say this, but in the short term, everything looks exciting. Think a little more medium term, right? 6 months from now, how does this going to impact? How is this going to impact you? And one thing I think, just for me personally, like I've realized that don't equate everything in terms of money, right? There's lots more to life after money. Like once you're into your career for X number of years, you realize that like you will make eventually X number of years from now, you will make more money in 1 month what you made in the entire year, or any of those dynamics, right? That is true, right?
Correct.
It's very difficult for someone early in the career to realize it, but slowly that is the truth. You will make enough money at some point of time, as long as you're going, and in tech especially, if you're going down this route, you will get a little better, you will get better jobs. That's not a, but you need to do something outside of work that excites you, right? And that's probably one of the reasons people, indulge in maybe communities, other ways to do it. So I feel that is the more important factor, as and when they realize that, okay, hey, it's not just about the money. That also comes maybe, right? This impact, maybe you'll get a much better job. That's happened to a lot more volunteers.
Right.
But I feel all that is secondary, right? The first impact is, okay, hey, like how do we just like help more people? And that just, like, I think most of the volunteers who stuck around from the beginning just enjoy that one aspect. They don't even think. In fact, we don't even discuss internally about such things. It just happens. That should. But it's more about, hey, okay, what is that next initiative? And now people have started questioning, okay, if you're launching a new initiative, internal volunteer, they start questioning that, okay, how is this going to impact people better? Initially, that question used to not come, okay, this looks exciting, let's do it. Now they are starting to think, okay, this looks exciting, but how is it going to help others? How is it going to impact? So I think that is a good point that a lot of other communities, at some stage, I think it's good to question. Sometimes I might be in my own bias, right? I'm like, hey, this looks exciting, let's do it. Or someone else says that. I feel that cross dialogue is also super important. And that's the healthy, like if you measure community in some form, it's probably not on volume. Tomorrow you will grow your community, but it's more on these engagement metrics. Are people, really thinking, doubling down on what is really creating an impact? I feel those are the metrics that someone should really track.
Right. And I think that is true for companies also, which are trying to build communities, right? Eventually, what is the value that you are, giving to the community members? If you're getting
on the company aspect, I'll share. I've seen a lot of companies now doubling down on building communities, like you mentioned. I think that is definitely true in 2021. It's not going away. And the best part is they're putting, effort and money behind it. The hiring
Right.
community managers, they are integrating this with the marketing departments, with the engineering department, with their branding department. Like they're figuring out the ways community work for them. And they're also realizing that, hey, it takes time. Initially also they might have, but then 3 months, 6 months later, like, okay, hey, this is not giving us any ROI, a direct return on investment. So then they used to shut it down. But I think now they're at least invested, and especially second time founders, I see like even from day one, they're starting community first, right? Whether they're a SaaS solution, whether they're building out a consumer product, name some of the larger startups starting today, right from your Jupiter, which is a neobank, to Rocketly, which is a SaaS product. All of them are thinking of community from day one, even before their product is like. So I think that's a great inflection point. I'm talking from an India point of view. In the West, it's a couple of years ahead, right? But from an India point of view, I think lots of second-time founders are taking this very, very seriously, and that's a very positive sign, right? So there's more respect, there's more money coming into the domain of community management. You'll see a lot more people taking this up seriously. You'll see a lot more good community managers come out.
Right. In fact, just extending this, right? I mean, if you think of community as a theme, there have been movements, right, that people have contributed their time to, from Wikipedia to open source to even political movements, right? I mean, whether you talk of Arab Spring or whatever else, right? It always boils down to community building. So, do you see that as something which is going to become more and more stronger in India, where these communities will also start thinking about, okay, what else can we do outside of, say, somebody like a product folks? What can you do outside of product management, since you
100%.
have that community?
I'll give you two examples, right? One of our volunteers was running, right? He's not running it anymore. Was running one of India's largest political communities. It was a Facebook group with more than like 10 million people. No, not 10 million. I don't know the number exactly, but maybe a million plus for sure, right? 3 million, approximately 1 to 3 million. Right? That's a huge number to actually manage. And there's so many different learnings that come from that. So I'm just giving one example of that is happening within the community. Second most recent example, for 2 months we shut down operations for TPF, and all of us were involved in day-to-day COVID relief efforts, right? We built out a donate page. We got more than 4 million hits in a month, right? And all of this are just this entire team saying that, hey, okay, we must pause everything we're doing. And it's so much easier because we're already across 27 different cities in India, right? Towns and cities, different places, tier 2, tier 3, tier 1. So that became on overnight, right? On Thursday, we thought, okay, hey, we are going into this second wave. Things are getting very bad. Can we do something about it? On Friday, we were like, hey, let's pause. And by Saturday, Sunday, we had the Glide app ready, right? We had that resources. By Monday, we had the donate page ready in a span of 5 days, which wouldn't have been possible because you spend 5 days, first of all, to figure out, hey, what to do and how do you get more people to, how do you mobilize? This was already in place for us, right? So within 5 days, we saw that impact. And of course, then word spread and then like traction increased. But within 5 days, at least we had that initial thing ready. There were different people contributing in different ways. We had like volunteer groups across WhatsApp, which would have become super overwhelming for people who are doing it for the first time. But for us, operations ran on WhatsApp, so it happened like overnight, right? And I saw so many other volunteer groups spring up, right outside of Twitter. I don't know the impact it created. Honestly, I can't I feel like 99% impact is definitely what doctors did in hospital. But even that 1% of just trying to put in some effort to bridge people, to help, just being the support layer. I feel in that, I think a lot of these volunteer groups stepped up, and not just us. I saw at least 30 different volunteer groups spring up over the last, in that COVID relief effort. So these are just two recent examples to share with you. I think community management has been going along, for decades, for years, for centuries together in different forms, whether religious, whether political, just causes, right? Tomorrow there are so many of these volunteer groups who are doing like environmental, like trying to protect the earth. Like I feel those are also much larger causes to contribute to. Product management, in fact, is a smaller like a niche that we started with. It's important to start with a niche, but over time it grows. Tomorrow we might become the world's largest place for entrepreneurs to go to, right? Eventually that just increases our community, and I think that's how communities grow. You start with a niche and eventually you become an umbrella where lots of these people find value. As long as you're providing value, as long as the people are finding value, I don't think like it doesn't matter how small or big the cause is. But absolutely what you mentioned, I think it's a matter of time. Some causes are much larger from day one and attracts a lot more people, but it's that much harder to manage, right? Imagine climate change itself is so hard to make an impact, but lots of volunteer organizations coming up there as well. So I think it's a matter of, I think it's just been there. We're seeing like a new form to it.
Correct.
And lots of learnings we're just picking up from what's already existing.
Right.
Just adapting to the new times. That's all.
Yeah. In fact, that's the most common thing that I say to founders when I talk about helping them build and articulate their culture and influence their employees. People have been doing this for centuries. Religion was always about building that culture. They had rituals. They had this mythology of stories. That's the same thing we want to build. Just that you are a remote company doesn't mean the tactics change, right? It's the same things that we've been doing for centuries that we just need to apply to this context. So very very true to exactly what you said. So one question that comes to mind is, for a community or a community builder, what can be defined as success?
Sure. Again, 2-3 ways to look at it. I think if you're looking at this as a full-time gig and you want to build like a monetizable layer, I think that should be your North Star. Tie up your value to if people are paying for it, that there's a direct correlation to value, right? If they're seeing value in it, they will pay for it, right? End of the day, they're paying and they're not seeing value, they're going to drop out of it, right? Whether you're thinking of membership, whichever form of it you're thinking, if that is your core, if you're trying to build a business out of it, figure out where people are willing to put money to their mouth. Like many people say, hey, you do it, we will pay for it. That's a very different category. But if they're really paying for it, that means you are creating value, right? That's how I would say that. So that is one category. Second is maybe, like us, if you're building a volunteer driven community, then optimize for, what is that outcome, right? People are sticking along. Many people might get attracted to it, thinking like, okay, hey, what is this, that nuanced way? How many people are sticking to it, right? So that's a different metric. How engaged is your community might be a good metric to track. So success might be like, are you growing? In fact, like if you stagnate, it becomes a problem at some point of time, because there will be churn in community, right? It's never going to be 100 out of 100 people, especially in a completely free community. Even in paid communities that happens, right? So keep growing month on month. That can be one metric you can track. And second is the value you're providing. Now this value can be, if people are coming back to your community, that is the engagement metric you're tracking, then you are providing value, right? So these are proxy metrics. I don't think there's a direct metric. If for us you ask me what's a direct metric, it is the outcome we are creating. How many people are transitioning, those who are looking to break into product, right? How many of them are transitioning via product? So that could be a metric we are tracking, right now we started tracking that. And for senior people, right? So this is for people who want to break into product, but for senior, mid senior, look at, like, we've been doing a lot of user interviews now. I think the focus is also on that for now, right? Till now we've been focusing a lot more on helping people to break into product, but maybe over the next 6-12 months we want to build out that layer where people who are already into product, how do we help them get better at their skill? How do we help them interact with more, either people in their circle of company, people who are in their same journey, or people who are like senior to them, maybe for mentorship, maybe for guidance, etc. Right? So there can be different ways of doing it, but maybe success metrics there will be like how many of those intros can we make, how many of these people actually find value. So they're the metrics for us, Jane. So I feel like depends on the path you're taking, right? If monetization is a goal, definitely focus on it. It's easier to tie back. It might take you a little longer, but in our case, I think value is the success metric. Like if you're growing month on month and we are able to increase or at least maintain our engagement rate, that means okay, people are at least finding some value to it. If we can increase our engagement rate, if we can increase our retention rate, nothing like it. I think I would put a lot more emphasis on that. And primary metrics, slowly I think we also want to transition to outcomes, like how do we help more people and actually track that as a metric. That is number one. For senior, mid senior folks, it is about, like, again, it's very difficult for me to tell you, okay, hey, how are you going to track this value as a metric? But I think some of these lagging indicators help you, right? If you are growing month to month, if you are increasing your engagement rate, and eventually people are putting out these testimonials, with or without you saying, people are going to say that out on social. So if that is going, I think this is a fair value to say. Growth equals to success metrics in some ways, right? A meaningful growth, right? It is not about growing an audience here. It is more about helping your community members find value from it. Now, this value as a metric can be different for different communities.
Right. Yeah. So if you think of the product community in India, right? Like I said, there have been these bodies, the NASCOM, Product Council, and all these people who are trying to do something, and they've done a fantastic job. What do you think should the education system and companies do to again improve the product community? You guys are doing a fantastic job. You are volunteer driven, but there is a role that someone else needs to play and has not done a great job for whatever reason. Where is it that they can step up, both the education system and companies themselves?
100% agree. I think both of them have a equally important role to play, right? From the education point of view, what we are doing, I think that is something the education system should essentially be doing, right? And so as an entire program can come much more earlier. Many of them who joined in are people who are early in their career. Like I think at least 40% of people who entered in Sojo was early in their career. I think that is something education system can just take it off, whether as a core curriculum, whether as workshop on top of it. I think as early as we can get into product building, nothing like it, right? So I think on the education front, for sure, I'll extend education to even companies, right? As they enter, it is not only about the work they're doing, but also a lot that they can help in upskilling, right? Whether they're doing that internal, like as an L&D program, or they're partnering with, maybe even courses, maybe even bootcamp. But it is very important to help, your employees continuously upskill. The market is changing so fast. The skills are changing. The tools are getting outdated. The concepts, fundamentals remain the same, of course, right? So that is something to pick up, but everything around you is changing, right? Unless you can help your employees stick around, you as a company might not be relevant tomorrow, right? So it is as important for you, because if they learn these skills and they're able to apply it to your company is also going to grow. So I think from both point of view, it's important. We as a volunteer driven community try to play the enabling layer, right? NASCOM probably was the enabling layer between the government and lots of these industries, where they were trying to get a lot more participation. So I think they're at a far better stage to solve this. But just like every other community, right? When you're in the first early 12 to 24 months, you have a lot more excitement. You're a little smaller. You can build things way more in an agile fashion, right? Hey, I want to do this. It doesn't take so much time. Once you grow out, like to a body that's that big, there are a lot more processes. There's lots more bureaucracy. There are things that you can get done very easily, But then it is also important for you to stick to your grassroots. Like, do you have enough ears on the ground to see if this is really making an impact, right? You probably have a lot more connect, like I mentioned, on the top of the pyramid, but you need to at the same time have at least ears on the ground to ensure. Also, you'll be living in your own biases, right? So that, I think, is that enabling layer, and it's easy to do that. And this is probably something very important for us also as we grow. I think it is important for us to still stick to the roots and understand at that point of time what is it that the community wants, right? So I think for bodies like them, I think it is super important not to just, policy is something they can drive, right, to do it, but at the same time ensure that whatever policy you're driving is actually relevant to today, right? Not relevant to what you thought is relevant or what you started doing 8-10 years back. At that point of time, what you did was fantastic, and today what you're doing is great, right? But you need to ensure that the level of power you have is translating down to outcomes which is relevant to today's time, right? So it is they have a lot more leverage, honestly. Like, essentially, we'd love to partner, we'd love to do things together also, but it should just align, right? It should just align. I think that becomes the most, and I feel like that is an inherent advantage we have. We have lots more young folks who are guided by senior PMs, who are guided by people who are a little, um, senior in their career. So I feel like that important. Even if they get a lot more junior folks in their organization, that will help them understand what is the challenges people face today. Or maybe don't play out that entire month. Maybe just solve at the top. And that is also completely okay, right? Maybe you are solving policy level changes. Maybe you are making an impact. I think they do a lot of stuff on the policy side of things. They do a lot. They're in fact also coming out with the upskilling programs. They did a great job in trying to do the entire services to product wave, right? When you mentioned that, I think iSpirit did a great job, Product Nation did a great job, NASCOM did a great job, and these organizations are far, far bigger today. So for them to come down to the grassroots, they can in fact do every single thing we're doing, maybe to greater precision also. I think it is about the incentives aligning for them, right? I think as the
Right.
organization grows, focus shifts, energy shifts. Everyone is very, very excited early on. How do you maintain this energy as the company grows? As with every company, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah, yeah. And for individuals, what is your advice to them who are, looking, and this is true for people at different levels, right? From somebody who's just starting off their career, what do you do today in order to be relevant tomorrow? That is, that is what is most important. We have seen people. In fact, we've had guests on this show who have, self-taught themselves to move from a business analyst role in a large IT services company to now being a product owner
yes,
in a startup, right? But he actually had to do the hard yards himself, right?
yes,
Because there's
yeah,
nothing supporting him. So
yeah.
what are the things that people should do, both for somebody who's just starting off their careers? Where should they what should they seek out? Where should they volunteer? To somebody who's, say, mid career, 5-10 years in any kind of a role, product or services company, what should
Yeah.
they be thinking? Any advice to them?
Yeah. I'll probably go on record to say this, that there is absolutely no substitute to hard work. So if you're looking for like work-life balance, then and everything in life is trade-offs, right? So ensure that at any point of time, if you want like a really good work-life balance, just remember there are tons of other people out there in the same market who are putting way more effort than you are. Forget talent, right? You
Right.
might be very talented, that might offset your hard work by small percentages, right? But if you are out there saying that, okay, they do hustle culture, and I'm saying this on record, right? I'm not promoting hustle culture. It is each one's choice. That's all I'm saying, right? I'm saying that if you will, it is proportional to the effort you're putting in, right? You can call it smart work, right? Smart work is essentially hard work plus more direction added to it, right? You're going in the right path, and luck, I'm not discounting for luck. Everything has luck. How do you increase this? You might be working super hard, things might not work out for you. I agree. There are lots of instances we've seen. But what is in our hands, right? Is luck in our hands? No. What is in our hands is the effort we put in. We can control the inputs, we cannot control the outputs, right? So basic thing is, forget everyone around you. Might not come from the best circumstances. Completely okay. It's in the past. You might not have the best circle around you, because oftentimes I think ambition and every other thing that we see around us is a factor of that for sure. What have you been exposed to, right? So you might not come with that again in the past, right? Today, maybe it's very difficult for you. If you want something tomorrow, it might not happen, right? Immediately, something might not happen. But if you put effort today, 6 months, 12 months, needle will move, right? If you're putting in effort, needle will move. How much the needle moves, I cannot guarantee, you cannot guarantee, no one can guarantee, right? There is different factors that come into it. So if you're early into your career, some very tactical things to do, right? Split it into two buckets, right? One is figure out whether you want to grow up the career. What do you want to do, right? Initially, do you are you in that position that you want to start something of your own? Are you in that position? Like, write that down. Is that something you are in the position? If not, maybe 5-10 years from now, do you want to start up, right? How do you work towards that? Do you want to be like an engineering leader? Do you want to be a product leader at a company? How do you work towards that, right? First step is figuring out, okay, fine. And like, honestly, even I don't know what maybe want to do 10 years from now. Very difficult, right? So just have a broad vision. Maybe it's like 5 different visions also. Maybe I want to do this or this and this, etc., etc. Just have some vision towards where do you want to go, right? If you want to get into hospitality but you're doing engineering and working in an IT firm, it's completely different, right? Not even going close. So have a broad idea to start with. Whether early or mid in your career, at least have some path, right? And mid career, more importantly, now you have lesser options, right? As you go up, you have lesser options. So you need to start figuring out with more depth. Second, now is where you start building it into 2 steps, right? 2 different skill sets. One is, how do I get into those opportunities? How do I increase my surface area to get into those opportunities, right? Is it better for me to sit and apply to 200 roles on LinkedIn and then like wait for a chance? Or can I create more opportunities for myself, right? Can I, maybe, start a podcast, be a part of a community? Can I start writing more blog posts? Can I, be active on social, maybe Twitter, LinkedIn? Figure out what your game lies at, right? Can I just, maybe I don't even need to do all that. Can I just reach out to, write 15-20 cold mails and the companies I'm interested in, right? There are different ways, there are 100 different ways to do it. Figure out what works for you, but at least take that first step. Tomorrow you might start a podcast, 3 months later you realize this is not for me, but you might figure out, okay, here, at least you've eliminated something. You realize, okay, maybe podcasting is not a thing. You'll then explore, hey, maybe is writing my thing, right? So it's completely okay. Experiment a lot more early in your career to figure out what works for you, right? Do you enjoy engaging with people, right? I enjoy, like, I think that the reason when you asked me also how or why you got into product, or why product, like why as a community, I think I enjoyed just interacting with people, right? I think in the hindsight I can say that maybe back then I didn't know, right? So experiment a lot early in your career, and don't fall for that FOMO, right? You can have different circles of friends. If your primary circle of friends is not doing it, don't worry, you can still go out and do it. Just because they're not doing that, what will they think about me? I think early in your career that sets in a lot. So these are 2-3 things which I feel tactically just get out of that. You can do a lot of these things. Second part that I was telling is build that skill, right? Here, this will help you get an opportunity, but once you get an opportunity, it is equally important. So yes, you need to get that opportunity, get the foot in the door. And there's a great book called The Third Door by Alex. You can check that out. You can put a link in the description. That is a great way to build the first bucket, right? How do I get that opportunity? Now that I've got the opportunity, how do I prove my worth? So it's equally important for you to have that skill, whether it's engineering, product, etc., etc. I'm a huge believer that things can be learned online, but at the same time, I don't downplay. Like, for example, in product, there's a huge discussion that goes on. Hey, is MBA required to get into product, right? I don't downplay it, right? It's a great accelerator. If you have that 30-40 lakhs that you want to invest, and you have the skill to get into a college like ISB, nothing like it, right? It's a great accelerator. Well, in fact, you'll have to put 2x the hard work to do it from the outside. Brand plays an important role, whatever said and done. Plus, it opens up some of these doors, right? So what you are essentially doing in 2 buckets, ISP does that for you, and there are long-term effects of it. People just think about, hey, does it help me transition? It's an accelerator, whether in terms of money, whether in terms of skill, whether in terms of opportunity, it's an accelerator, right? The trade-off is, hey, yes, you are spending some money, energy, right? You are spending money is that form that you are trading that for some time that you're saving there, right? Other way of doing it is, can you get that material? Can you hustle your way? Can you make that network? Can you write cold emails, right? So there are 2 buckets. There is no fine line, but in both of them, they're working hard. Whether you go to ISB, you still need to put in the hard work. They stay up nights to solve those case study, break those interviews, right? It's not easy for them, right? And say today you're like, okay, dude, I don't want to spend that 34 lakhs. I don't want to go to ISB. I don't want that credential. I can do it on my own. Imagine they have all that, plus they're spending 14 hours a day, full time. They're studying, preparing for interviews, etc., building that network. Are you putting in that effort? You first of all have a 8-10 hour job, right? On top of that, you need to match up with something like this. Just imagine, I'm just putting it out there. These are facts, right? There's nothing to do with hustle. There's nothing out here, right? Putting it out there, you're probably playing for the same. Now Google opens up 3 openings. Say you break in also, right? You are also, you can talk about zero sum, how much ever, right? But there are 3 positions that they're opening up this year, right? Maybe you are exceptional. They might create that 4th position, but you have to become that exceptional person. You need to break in, you have to come in front of them And Google in fact doesn't hire so much outside. At least lateral is very, very like later stage. And I just gave this an example, right? Tomorrow you want to work with an early stage company also, you know, to get in front of them, you know, to get that opportunity, then you know, to prove your skill, right? So it is a factor of the work you put in. Some might get lucky early, some might get lucky later. There's a factor of luck, but there is that effort you put in. I think either mid or late, it is very important for folks to understand the market they are playing, the game they are playing. First, understand the game you're playing, then understand the market you're playing, and tell me one person who has made it without working hard, and I'll be convinced. But I just feel like people want it easy today, which is not the case, right? Whether, and it's a function of time and patience. Like we are all in a FOMO driven society, right? We want everything happening tomorrow. Realize that the person next to you might be putting in the effort that you don't know, right? So I think, like, one word, if I had to say it, like, it is the effort, right? People are putting lots of effort behind the scene. Do that, then rest of it will follow. And there are different ways to do it, right? Figure out different paths. What game you want to play is in your hand, but whatever game you play, you need to put in the effort.
Required for that game.
A little extended answer, but I just went as deep as I could.
Yeah. So you mentioned the book The Third Door. So any other books, podcasts, people to follow that you would recommend?
I'll tell you what I'm reading right now. So, like, I've just started like a couple of books that I have. One is if you're into the investing side of things, I'm currently reading The Education of a Value Investor, and this book called One Up on Wall Street by Peter Lynch. So I've just been interested in the stock market lately. Another one that I'm currently reading is Originals by Adam Grant. I think this is pretty famous. That is another book I'm reading. And I think one of them is Barking Up the Wrong Tree. I think this was a gift by a friend, one of our TPF members only just sent it out. It's by Eric Barker. So these are four books that I'm currently reading. I haven't really got the time to read as much. I'd love to, but I think I have one called The 22 Immutable Laws of Branding. I think that is super important for me to read right now. Yeah, you read it, right? That's lying on my shelf. I want to read that at least by the end of this year.
Right. Yeah, that'll change the way you look at the world.
Oh yeah. Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. That was in fact gifted to me by another founder friend, Ankit from Oslash.
Okay.
So, a fantastic guy.
Okay, great. So that brings us to the end of this conversation, Suhas. But before you go, I'm going to ask you for your hot takes on three things.
I've given too many already, I feel.
Okay, so the first one is, what do you think is the future relevance of product startups in India?
Super bullish. I'm super bullish. I feel like you just saw like the recent Dairy Milk campaign, Rephrase.ai, right? Ashton team, fantastic job. I feel like this decade, like I'm 110% bullish on this. I feel like if you are early in your career listening to this, if you're mid in your career listening to this, just look out for funding announcements. Those are the teams that are just out there with money looking to grow. Reach out with some relevance, some value, right? Make a deck, see the pain points, reach out to senior product managers there. Like I'm talking from a product point of view, but any role that you'd like to, if it's a smaller company, reach out to the founder directly. I'm sure they'd be willing to chat with you. They want great talent to work with them, right? You just need to add value before. Like, that's the best way, right? Can you add value even without being a part of their team? Especially young in your career, take the chances. And I'm super bullish, honestly. Short answer to that, 110 bullish on product startups from India. This decade is definitely, theirs. Ours.
What do you think is the future relevance of metaverse?
At the risk of sounding cliche, there's something I've been exploring as well. And what I've done is I've set up like an other Twitter account, like another anon Twitter account, where I just follow these folks. So it feels like, and there's some account that I open only late night just before sleeping. So I live in another world just before going to sleep. And it's very different, right? Many of us are not believers today, but the biggest companies, Facebook and Microsoft, have already announced, right? So they're FOMO driven, but you just need to remember that this FOMO is now at that stage, right? It may be FOMO, but now the FOMO is at that stage. These are two biggest trillion, like biggest companies on the other side of the world, right? So it's a matter of time till it follows you. And I've been working very closely with founders in India, some founders in India building in this space. So it's a very exciting time, honestly. If you're early in your career, if you have the time or if you have the bandwidth to take a bet, go for it. 2 years later, it might not work out. Not saying, I think it's very early, like you mentioned, very early to say yes or no to this. But if you have the chance, I think definitely take a bet on this.
Okay.
I'm bullish again. I think both things I'm super bullish at the intersection of it, to be honest.
And what do you think is the future relevance of Indian B schools?
Honestly, some of my closest friends have done good degrees India and abroad. So not dissing, but I feel and I want to do. I think on the shelf behind you can also see my GMAT preparation book lying there for like 2.5, 3 years. So I feel like if you get a chance today, do it. Relevance of it from the point of view, right? If you're going there for the network, internet makes things easier. You can build network in a better way. If you're going there for the degree as a credential, and you want to work at startup founders, don't look at degrees, don't look at credentials. You have better ways of showcasing that in the internet first world. You can spend a fraction of that money and then like get into really coveted CBCs. For example, there are these Reforges, Ondex, the Suhas, the all these CBCs that are springing up, right? Go be a part of them early, right? Because that's where the network is very curated, and for a fraction of that money, you can be like I feel like end of the day, figure out what you want from that MBA, right? These colleges aren't going anywhere because I think huge endowment, huge instances where they're there, and there'll still be a large majority of people who want to go to it. So I don't think it's going away anywhere. How relevant will it stay in an internet first world? I feel there are much better opportunities available today. So it is in your hand what game. Again, comes down to the game you want to play. It's not going away anywhere. I feel still like 90% of Janata will look forward to that and that credential because of how we are as a society, right? So in the short to medium term, it's not going away, but lots of great opportunities in the short to medium term for you to expand your network, to expand your skill. And credential will come over time, right? Credential isn't something that you can pick up as easily. So maybe being part of one of these boot camps or CBCs can be an alternative. It is not an alternative, can be an alternative if they grow to a similar tomorrow. 10 years from now, if that on deck has the same value as a Harvard, maybe not, right? Because they have a much larger rigorous process of getting in. The brand has been built over 50 years. So I think the credential will take time, but are the opportunities they're looking for that credential, right? Today, are they looking for that credential? Maybe not. And that is something that will change over time, right? The proof of work concept is coming true. There's lots of ways to showcase that. In fact, I don't come from a tier 1 college, but over the last 5 no one has asked me for which college I come from, right? And I'm not even there yet. Like I haven't even done. So I feel like there are so many ways to showcase your proof of work. It takes some time. Again, boiling down to exactly that. I feel like it's not going away anywhere, but you have lots more avenues today to showcase your skill set for you to upskill. So you'd rather invest there if you're putting in the same amount of effort. You'd rather invest in that. I think the returns are much larger. Like that amount of money if you spend here, there's a chance the upside is a lot more, right? You're there. I think the upsides are capped at some point. Again, like I'm not a believer saying that hey, no MBAs. I've seen lots of my friends get that career boost with it. Some of my closest friends have gone to good colleges, right? So I've seen the impact of that. So anyone who tells me hey, MBAs are useless, I'm not on that school of thought as well. But I feel like these are good opportunities as well, right? And for a much lesser risk point of view. And why risk? I tell you because if you're going outside of India for studies, you're spending that 100K, 200K, which you will have to spend the next 3-4 years getting back, right? Here also, if you're spending 30-40 lakh, of course your salary will be higher outside of an MBA if you're going to. And if you're doing an MBA, do it only in tier 1, right? I'm comparing only tier 1 as an MBA. I'm not even talking about tier 2, tier 3. Don't do tier 2, tier 3. So when you mentioned about relevance, in my head I was talking only about tier 1 MBA. Tier 2, tier 3 MBAs, yes, there will be a much lesser relevance, again for a different part of the population, which maybe we are not discussing today. So as I'm assuming, one, yes, we're not discussing tier 2, tier 3 MBA, and we're discussing only for the top X%, right? That's where I'm coming from. I think for that percentage of population, which mostly will be listening to your podcast, I feel you all have a lot more, opportunities today. grab that. 2 years later, that doesn't work. I think MBA is always going to be there. So not a problem.
On that note, Suhas, I think that was a fantastic, about almost an hour long chat that we had on the nuts and bolts of community building, and how things are changing in the world of startups, and how should people think about it. Two things that stood out for me. One was time, time and patience when it comes to community building, and for individuals to think about their future relevance, know the game that you are playing, know the rules of the game, and make a very deliberate choice of whether you want to play that game or not. If you
Exactly.
play it, make sure you know the rules and play it accordingly. Otherwise, you are playing T20 in a test, or a test in a T20.
Know the rules so you can break it as well, right? If you want to go
Correct.
via the third door, right? I think there's something even he talks about a lot. So if you don't know the rules, you don't know, and it's fine. Like just learn the basics, like just understand how it works, then break it. It's fine. But at least understand the game you're playing. Like that, if you
Right.
don't know what game you're playing, then you're in two boats, two legs in two boats, which becomes very difficult for you to go further.
Yeah, yeah. So on that note, Suhas, thanks a lot for this great conversation.
Thanks so much, Harish. I honestly loved it. Thanks for driving the conversation. And I'm also looking forward to how the podcast goes. So thanks so much for having me here.
Thank you.